were really primates. They were on ART. We gave them an in vivo injection of delivery with AAV9, carrying this all-in-one plasmid that includes the SA-Cas9 and the gRNAs. And we found that viral excision from the 5' to GAG and the GAG to 3' in blood and in multiple tissues. So far, we've examined spleen and lung and various lymph nodes, and we saw excision in all of those different regions, but we're really looking now and more extensively at other tissues. So that's what we're doing now. And for the biodistribution, we looked at digital droplet PCR in a variety of different tissues throughout the entire body of the macaque, and every single tissue that we looked at, we saw Cas9 DNA expression. And so we're doing the cleavage of that now.
So just to do a little mathematics, you gave 10 to the 13 particles per
kilogram.
So,
sure.
So 10 to the 9 is a billion. 10 to the 12 is a trillion. So you gave 10 trillion virus particles per kilogram. And how much does a macaque weigh?
So these were ranging between 7 and 9 kilograms.
So let's round it up to 10, right?
Sure.
So you gave 100 trillion virus particles to an animal, and they were widely distributed and did their thing. Now, one question that comes up with CRISPR Cas9 is off-target effects.
Sure.
And how do you plan to look at that?
So we've done a number of different analysis for off-target. The first is that we really designed our gRNAs so they're very specific for our targets of LTR and GAG, and they have to. And then we looked at specificity for the rhesus genome in this case, and we saw that you had to have 5 mismatches as the minimum amount to hit and to be homologous with any of the SIV genes. So that's the first thing we did is we really looked at that. And now we're in doing analysis of off-target effects in the tissues, in the blood, and we're trying to do some single cell off-target deep sequencing with long reads and short reads. So we're doing a number of different, we're also looking at specific oncogenes because there's a big potential with oncogenes, a certain paper. So we think that our system is a little bit different because we're doing direct in vivo injection. So we're minimizing off target.
So let's open it up to questions. John?
Please hold on 1 second for a microphone.
So when you looked at the necropsy 2 animals, you didn't find any evidence. It seemed to me that you had cured them, but you didn't say as much. Do you think that they were cured of their SIV? Because you tried to transfer also, and you didn't get an infection when you transferred. And if you don't think you cured them, what do you think?
So right now, what I think is that we can't say that we cured them. We're still looking. Our endpoint for this study was viral excision to see if we could, in fact, get viral excision in vivo, and we proved that we could. So now, I think our next job is to, maximize efficiency and distribution, and try to hit as many targets as possible before we do that. And the viral outgrowth assays were very preliminary, and we didn't do any induction. So right now we're looking to do some induction assays with RNA.
So at what point would you say that you cured them? What do you want to see that you haven't seen?
So obviously the main would be an analytical treatment interruption. So we would like to do those studies where we, have the animals on ART suppression, we give them the CRISPR-Cas, and then we take them off, because you really want to say, one, do we decrease the viral reservoir, and does that equate to, sustained remission?
Quick follow-up, John. It's okay.
We have to move on. Sorry, John. John, stopping ART is the litmus test and looking at a variety of tissues for any evidence of relapse. Okay. Okay. So my fault. We're a little short on time. So let's move on to Pablo. Tell us in a nutshell what your study was about and what you think you accomplished.
Well, what we did was similar to what we have done before with zinc finger nuclease, is to try to remove the CCR5 co-receptor in HIV infected individuals. So we collect the CD4 counts of the CD4 cells from the patient using a leukapheresis, and then in vitro, we treat them with zinc finger nuclease. In this study, what we did is we delivered the zinc finger nuclease using a different technology. Instead of using an adenovirus vector, we use a transfection of mRNA with a machine that is made by a company called Maxcyte. And why that is important is because when you use an adenovirus vector, it's immunogenic. And then so you cannot use multiple doses. And in this way, you theoretically can give multiple doses of the product and you have not induced immunogenicity to the vector. So maybe those cells will survive longer. And it's much easier to do. You don't need the vector. Dealing with an mRNA is much simpler. So, and the other thing that we did in this trial is to try to increase engraftment. The problem with doing what we are doing in an autologous setting is that we don't get the 100% engraftment that guy gets when they did an allogeneic bone marrow transplant. So we only have a fraction of the cells that have been removed when we put them back. So how can you increase that? So you want to create a space. So what you give is a conditioning regimen, very mild, mild is in the eye of the beholder, but is cyclophosphamide at a dose that is lower than the cancer drugs that we use, is similar to what is used in lupus, 1 gram per square meter and 1.5. So it's a well-tolerated dose. People don't lose their hair and they don't have severe neutropenia, which is the issue. And we show in the study that by doing that, you increase the engraftment. So a greater number of cells, modified cells, have the ability to engraft. And then we did the treatment interruption to see if those cells, the reason why we did the treatment interruption is just to show that those cells that have been genetically modified survive in the presence of HIV. We were a little bit surprised, but there was a delay in the viral rebound, which was an endpoint of the trial. And we saw that, and which is a nice thing to have because it's a positive result. It's easier to present that when you have a positive result. So, and we saw a little bit of a delay. Is it dramatic? No. It's like when you use a single monoclonal antibody, you see a little bit of the shift of the curve to the right, which is suggests that maybe because there are less targets, it takes a little bit longer to the virus to come out, but nothing to think that we have a solution long term.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Liz.
Liz Heileman from AIDSmap. I'm wondering if you could explain a little how this research differs from the, sort of starting in 2011, they were reporting on a zinc finger CCR5 approach from Sangamo, and that research proceeded for a couple of years and then it sort of fell off the map. And is this, it seems like you're starting over doing kind of the same thing, or is it different?
It's the next step of the same thing. I mean, Sangamo is our collaborator in this trial, and we want to, I mean, basically better delivery systems and increase engraftment is the next natural step. It takes a long time to do these trials, and it seems that it's forever, but and not only to you, but also to me, that is a stepwise approach. So what we want to do is to use this technology in the next trial that we want to do CAR T cells. And because in the CAR Ts, our ectodomain, the part that is outside the CAR T is CD4. By doing that, you make those cells susceptible to HIV infection. So you have to protect them. And that's why we want to use this technology to protect those cells.
And just in line with your question, there's no roadmap here. There's no known timeline. We have to work our way along, you know, from the first evidence of an antiviral effect against HIV to a combination ART that induced sustained suppression. That was a long time.
10 years.
You know, it was almost 10 years, okay, where the proof of principle had been established for antiviral therapy for 20 or 30 years. Here, this is a brave new world, and we're gonna move along in fits and starts. I wanted to give you that perspective. Our next presenter is Deb McMahon. Would you like to just summarize the results? Sure. This was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I'm the disappointing person in the room. But it did provide some valuable insight, I think. We evaluated a drug called romidepsin as part of a kick and kill cure strategy. It's a histone deacetylase inhibitor. It's been evaluated in some earlier pilot studies of romidepsin and varunistat. Probably some of you are familiar with those results. But our study differed in that we conducted a randomized placebo-controlled study where individuals who enrolled in the study got 4 sequential doses of romidepsin at a dose of 5 milligrams per meter squared that had been shown to induce HIV expression in ex vivo work. And the dose we chose for the study was based on that ex vivo work, and we believed we would have adequate exposure to induce expression. We measured we used different measurements than the Danes. We used the single copy assay, and we also measured cell-associated RNA and DNA. We measured it prior to each infusion, and then at 24 hours and 72 hours after each time point. We also measured HIV RNA by the standard Abbott assay at day 7. And we also looked for the effect of romidepsin on the host. We looked for pharmacodynamic effects in terms of effect on percent CD4, as well as on activation of transcription factors and histone acetylation. And just to keep things short, we found no evidence of any effect on change in viremia. But we did see evidence of the impact on the host, pharmacodynamic effects. We saw a decrease in CD4%. And this drug, I'll just remind you, is used to treat people with cutaneous T-cell lymphomas. The dose we were using was about 36% of that used to treat people with lymphoma. We also saw evidence of increases in histone acetylation and evidence of activation of transcription factors. So I think our results point to the value of having a placebo group, even a very demanding study.
Placebos are hard, but parallel placebos need to be included. Small anecdotal studies can be misleading. We had a very reproducible effect of romidepsin on the host as expected. It did the things that it is known to do in the host, but the virus is in deeper latency than could be overcome by romidepsin, okay? And so we're really in the field looking for a decent kick. We would probably have a 2-year-old or an 18-month-old kick of a ball, okay? We're not anywhere where we need to be. Just as an aside, there was a presentation on SMAC mimetic that activates a different pathway, a non-canonical NF-kappa B pathway that looked promising in monkeys. So eyes are going to focus on that. But romidepsin in this study didn't seem active. So questions? Okay, and the last presentation needs no introduction. It's all over the media. Dr. Gupta, can you just give us your last or most recent thoughts about your patient?
Do you want the summary?
Yeah, a quick summary.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we're describing an individual who was HIV positive and who had stage 4B Hodgkin lymphoma and had failed multiple lines of chemotherapy and then had to have an allogeneic stem cell transplantation procedure. And fortunately, a donor registry found a donor that had the Delta 32 mutation in both copies, so replicating the Berlin patient's profile. And that transplant happened in 2016. We stopped antiretroviral therapy in that individual 16 months later. We'd done a group of assays to show that there was no detectable virus there. And then we interrupted treatment, and we're now 18 months post-interruption without any sign of rebound.
Thanks. So as far as we can tell, and by your assays, complete replacement of the host hematopoietic system, including all the lymphocytes, with a new hematopoietic system that is resistant to the virus he had. So complete ablation and replacement, and no rebound. Do you think every infected cell is gone from this person?
Probably not. And it also depends how you define infected. So there are probably defective genomes in multiple cells that are not capable of producing new virus.
Right. So does everybody understand that in this setting where you give a new hematopoietic system with no CFTR5, even if there is an infected cell that could produce virus, it can't spread. And so that ember dies out, if you will, okay? Now, you tried very hard to find that ember and couldn't, but proving that there's no ember is not possible because you'd have to take out every lymphocyte and look for it. But for all intents and purposes, you could not find.
That's right.
Yeah. And the other thing, important thing that Dr. Gupta said is if you find an infected cell, by work we know from other investigators, it's most likely to contain a provirus that is dead, because 99 out of 100 proviruses are dead. So let's open this up to questions. So.
All right. Ben Ryan again from Plasmazing. I know I asked multiple questions earlier, but I kind of want to press you on this one. Is there anything that you would like to say to people in the media or other researchers who are using the word cure to define this case? Would you like to ask them not to use that term?
It's a little bit difficult because people are already using the term. So I think asking them to retract it will be difficult, but
Not to retract, but just in the future.
yeah, maybe temper the sort of use of the word whilst remaining positive and trying to move the field forward. So yes, and I think it is a matter of time. I think in another 6 months to a year, things will be clearer.
I think we should take a page from the oncology literature in case they don't talk about cure until they've collected a lot of cases that show no evidence of relapse over at least a 5-year interval. And we basically have a handful of people who we might consider in remission off ART. And to say that they're cured is premature. And cure is a very, very powerful word. And I think it has emotional and psychological implications that go beyond the data. And so I would just stick with remission. We have an HIV remission off antiretroviral therapy or ART-free remission. I think that's
I want to comment on that. When you ask the community and people living with HIV, they like the word cure because it's like the holy grail, where you want to go. And they understand that they don't like the word remission when they have asked about that. And I went to a talk from a patient that was talking about cure. And he said, what do you mean I am not cured? I am taking 1 pill a day and I am healthy. I do all the things that I wanted to do. I see my family, I have my work. I am cured and I am taking a pill a day. So it means what it means is a term that people use for the medical perspective. We cannot talk about cure until long, long time. But for the community and for the field, I don't think it's a word. I mean, it means a lot for people living with HIV, and I think we should. I think we need to hear them and say what they think about this.
question.
BMJ, a couple of interrelated questions about the patient. The patient was diagnosed and was not treated for 10 years, correct? What prompted the treatment? Start of initiation of treatment? What was his peak viral load? And is there any suggestion that he might have been a controller to one degree or another?
So that the the viral load at diagnosis was 180,000 copies, and I think prior to the treatment it was something like 50,000, between 50 and 100,000. So there's no evidence of control.
the diagnosis of lymphoma was the reason to start treatments.
Do you think that there was any, you think that lymphoma might have been a trigger that caused some of the HIV progression?
I don't think so. I think more likely is that the immunosuppression was associated with the development of lymphoma. So the other way around. Yeah.
My question is also related. The one common denominator between two patients is at some point they experience cancer. How much that is affecting on the no rebound?
I don't think it's the cancer. Yes. So there are two different cancers. One was AML, then lymphoma. Sure. But I think it's more the treatment.
The cancer, the progressive cancer, made them eligible for a clinically accepted treatment, which is allogeneic bone marrow transplant. That is no walk in the park, okay? Has a mortality of 10 to 25%. So what's the common denominator is they had a very bad malignancy requiring extreme therapy.
Hi, excuse me, Jeff Berry, Positively Aware magazine. So is the patient a candidate for PrEP? Was he counseled? How was he counseled about that? Would it complicate issues if the virus was to rebound?
So we've had detailed discussions about the risk of rebound and what we would do. And so far, the individual has stated he's not sexually active and does not want to be for the duration of whatever we're doing at the moment. But there will be a conversation in the future and the near future as to where we are with that. Certainly, has been counselled about using condoms, etc. If there were sort of that occasion. PrEP for partners is part of that discussion that we need to have. But I think he's very motivated about achieving a remission and having it documented. That's his motivating, overriding motivation at the moment.
Question here, and then one more, I guess.
Hi, Annette Brindle from BioWorld. I actually have a related question for Dr. Gupta and Dr. Taylor. I was fascinated to just hear your statement of the patient who says, well, I'm taking a pill a day and I'm cured. And I'm curious, given that and given how successful antiretroviral treatment is, if you are successful in your trials, what do you think the uptake is going to be? Because it sounds like people will still need to do chemotherapy, even though milder regimens than with these bone marrow transplants, obviously. And relatedly, Sangamo has this listed on their website as legacy research, and I'm just wondering whether there's anything you can tell me about the path forward for your work, even if the trial is successful.
I mean, cure, as they said before, cure is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, it's a word that means different things for different people, and we have to understand that. And from the medical perspective, we would not say that that patient was cured because we don't have, but for other people, that it might mean that it was cured. So we need to know that there are different interpretations. I mean, that's the dilemma, is right? Current antiretroviral therapy is amazing, but it doesn't work for everybody. And there's still a lot of people that get reminded that they have HIV, and for them, taking a pill a day doesn't mean they are cured. It's a reminder, I have HIV, I have the stigma associated with HIV, I have to tell my partners that I have HIV. So there are people that feel that they are cured with one pill a day and people that feel very sick about one pill a day. And so finding a way to make people live without having to take antiretrovirals every day, I think is the goal of the research that we are doing. And that's the ultimate goal. So that's...
Dr. Tebas could entertain us for a while, but let's finish the last two questions.
Not too much.
No, it's very entertaining.
Alex Otto, MDH News. Okay, so it seems that the Delta 32 deletion is what we think might be going on with these patients in terms of the results you're seeing. But I believe you said in the presentation that there have been other transplants of patients with from donors with that homozygous deletion that have not worked, that haven't worked. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that. And also, second question, undoubtedly there are people that are reading the things in the New York Times and Washington Post and all the other places thinking that this is ready for pride time and we found a cure for AIDS or HIV. Clearly that's not the situation, but I'm wondering what you would like to say to those people.
So the the two cases I discussed about failure, one was because the patient was infected with a strain of HIV that can use the CXCR4 receptor, and that emerged basically after the transplant. But the patient actually died from disease. I can't remember, is it B-cell lymphoma? I can't remember, or anaplastic lymphoma. And then the other case was that I mentioned was cord blood. It wasn't. It was not adult stem cells, and that individual and that transplant failed itself, and therefore they couldn't demonstrate remission, even though the reservoir was unmeasurable, very, very low. Speaking to the question of newspapers saying there's a cure, I think that the press release, for example, was cautionary, and I think that if people interpret it in a certain way, that's not good journalism, I guess. So I'm hoping that people would read between the lines.
Go ahead, John.
What other case can you point to that has had remission off antiretrovirals with this level of analysis looking for virus for 18 months or longer? Can you point to other cases in the literature that have had the scrutiny that you've given to this for 18 months or longer?
So remission, post-treatment remission, you mean? So there are the post-treatment controllers.
Well, controllers of viremic are very low
Yeah.
level, but they're not virus.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Can you point to anything in the literature where there was difficulty finding virus in somebody who was off treatment? So that's the real question.
There are a subset of elite controllers, very rare elite controllers that have really. I mean, some of them don't even have antibodies. They've lost bands and Western blot. There are some out there, not very well documented, I would add. And Steve Deeks, I think, has been studying at least one or two of them. So I think that's still to be known. Yeah.
A comment. When we get into this discussion of cure versus remission, I think it's good to go back to the data and point out what other data exists of a human being who was on treatment, who went off, who after 18 months looked like this. I think that's the real point, if I can make my own editorial comment.
I like that.
All right, so the final take home is these cases are inspirational. The work ahead is to find out how to deliver the same result with less extreme measures. Again, just let me underscore that the two people who have been cured had lethal malignancies, okay, that were unresponsive to conventional therapy and had in the extreme measure of an allogeneic bone marrow transplant that has a high mortality, a completely unacceptable mortality compared with the earlier comment that Pablo made about, I feel cured, I'm on one pill once a day and I feel great, right? So that's the context. But we're moving forward. The velocity is unclear, but there will be accelerations and decelerations on the path to a cure. So thank you all.